It wasn't even fully morning yet, maybe 7:30 when the pounding hit our front door. Not a polite knock. Not neighborly. It was sharp, rapid, and dripping with authority that hadn't been earned. I was still working through my first cup of coffee, barely awake. Melissa stood at the sink in her robe, her damp hair twisted up in a towel. She paused mid-rinse and glanced over her shoulder at me, puzzled. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked. I shook my head. "We moved into Oak Valley 3 days ago. That's it. Supposed to be a quiet cul-de-sac. Respectable HOA. That's what the realtor said." I shrugged. Everything seemed normal. Until right now. The knocking came again, louder this time. I opened the door, and there she was, Karen Fletcher, president of the Oak Valley HOA, self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood, clipboard tucked under one arm, oversized sunglasses swallowing half her face, and a tight plastic smile that screamed, "I'm about to make this your problem." "Good morning," she sang out, leaning slightly to peer past me into the house, as if I were just a decorative plant in the doorway. "I'll need to see your identification. HOA policy. All new residents must verify identity within 72 hours. I blinked. "You need what?" "Identification," she repeated crisply, tapping her clipboard with a manicured finger. "Especially your wife's. She hasn't attended the mandatory new resident orientation." Melissa walked up beside me, folding her arms across her chest. "You want to see my ID?" she asked evenly. "And you are?" "I'm Karen Fletcher, HOA president." She puffed her chest slightly. "Security is extremely important in this community. We've had incidents." Melissa raised one eyebrow. "So you're going door to door like some suburban TSA?" Karen's smile thinned instantly. "Ma'am, I'll require your cooperation." Melissa's lips curled into the faintest smirk. "I don't think so." Karen stiffened. "Excuse me, you're not law enforcement. You're not hired security. You're a neighbor holding a clipboard. I'm not handing over my ID to a stranger standing on my porch." Karen's face flushed crimson. "Then I'll be issuing a non-compliant citation," she snapped. "You're already in violation of community standards." I exhaled slowly. "Karen, maybe there's just a misunderstanding. We'll attend the next HOA meeting." "We're happy to," but she wasn't listening. She had already pulled out her phone, turning slightly away from us. "Possible security breach," she whispered into it. "Residents refusing ID verification. Potentially hostile. Recommend immediate response." Melissa narrowed her eyes. "You did not just call the police." Karen looked back at her sharply. "No," she said. "Something better." She marched down the sidewalk without another word. 5 minutes later, sirens shattered the quiet of the cul-de-sac. Melissa stared at me flatly. "You have got to be joking." 3 matte black SUVs rolled in first, positioning themselves at the end of the street. An armored tactical van followed close behind. Doors flew open. Men in full tactical gear poured out, rifles raised. "Hands where we can see them," one shouted. Melissa didn't panic. She stepped forward calmly, lifting her hands in clear view, and then everything shifted. One of the tactical officers froze mid-stride. His eyes locked on her face. I saw recognition hit him like a jolt of electricity. He murmured something urgently into his radio. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his weapon. Then he snapped to attention and saluted. Karen, who had been standing at the edge of our driveway with a victorious expression, went ghost pale. The atmosphere changed in an instant. The rest of the team hesitated, glancing at one another, unsure whether to advance or retreat. The officer who had saluted stepped forward and removed his helmet. His face was square, serious, unmistakably authoritative. "Ma'am, Melissa Carter?" Melissa lowered her hands, but remained composed. "That's correct." He turned sharply toward his team. "Weapons down. This individual carries level 7 clearance. Stand down immediately." There was a beat of stunned silence, then rifles lowered. Boots shuffled backward. Karen's mouth fell open. What is this? Why are you saluting her?" She refused to provide identification. The officer pivoted toward Karen, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, I don't know what authority you believe you have, but you just initiated a federal escalation protocol. Had this situation progressed further, you could have been facing significant legal consequences. Karen looked like she had bitten into something sour. She's not federal, Karen sputtered. She's just some stay-at-home wife who wouldn't cooperate. Another agent approached, tablet in hand. He showed the screen to the team leader. The officer scanned it, gave a short nod, then looked back at Melissa with unmistakable respect. "Ma'am, I apologize for the disturbance," he said sincerely. "Your clearance didn't immediately populate in the rapid response database. We are clearing the perimeter now." Melissa finally spoke, her voice steady and cool. "Next time you deploy a tactical unit to a residential neighborhood because of a neighbor's complaint," she said, "you might want to verify your intelligence first." "Yes, ma'am," the officer replied. No sarcasm, just compliance. "Understood." Karen stared at Melissa as if seeing her for the first time. "What are you?" she demanded. "CIA? Military? Secret Service?" Melissa gave her a look sharp enough to split stone. "Have you ever heard of Tier 1 intelligence operatives?" she asked. Karen slowly shook her head. "Exactly," Melissa said quietly. "You're not supposed to." The lead officer turned toward me. "Sir, again, our apologies. There is no threat here. No report required on your end. We will expunge this activation from the system immediately." I nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. "Appreciate it." Within moments, the vehicles were loading up again. Doors slammed. Engines hummed. The convoy rolled out as quickly and silently as it had arrived. The cul-de-sac returned to stillness. Except now blinds were twitching, and neighbors peeked from behind hedges, whispering. Karen hadn't moved. She looked smaller somehow, like someone had deflated the invisible balloon of control she carried around with her. Melissa stepped toward her one final time. "Next time, Karen," she said calmly, "try bringing over a welcome pie instead of launching a tactical invasion." Without waiting for a reply, she turned and walked back into the house. I followed, closing the door behind me. I began, searching for the right word. "A long overdue lesson," she replied, heading back toward the kitchen as if nothing extraordinary had just occurred. I stood there for a moment, watching her, realizing that moving to Oak Valley might not be as quiet as we'd been promised. My wife, the woman I believed I understood completely, had just stared down a tactical unit without so much as a tremor in her voice. Who exactly had I married? I didn't get the chance to ask, because by the following morning, things escalated again. The day began in the most ordinary way imaginable. A light breeze brushed through the hedges outside. Birds chirped like nothing unusual had ever happened on our street. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, trying to convince myself yesterday had been some surreal misunderstanding, when Melissa calmly placed a thick manila envelope on the kitchen counter. I looked at it, then at her. "What's that?" "Documentation," she replied evenly, lifting her tea to her lips. I opened the envelope and nearly inhaled coffee straight into my lungs. Inside were pages that didn't look like anything you'd download off the internet. Heavy paper, government formatting, red classification stamps. Entire paragraphs were blacked out with thick bars of ink, and at the bottom of the stack was a photograph. Melissa, much younger, standing in full tactical gear, between two military helicopters parked in what looked like a desert staging zone. The aircraft weren't models I recognized. No visible insignias. No obvious markings, but her eyes were the same. Focused, analytical, impossible to read. "You were military?" I asked quietly. She tilted her head slightly. "Not exactly. My clearance operates parallel to special operations units. But my work has always been more technical than direct combat." That answered absolutely nothing. I was about to press further when the doorbell rang. I moved to the peephole. Karen was outside again, pacing like a restless predator, and this time she'd brought backup. Mr. Lyle from across the street stood awkwardly beside her, wringing his hands. Next to him was the thin guy who always wore golf polos, like he was permanently headed to a country club brunch. I cracked the door just enough to lean out. "Can I help you?" Karen wasted no time. "The HOA board convened an emergency meeting this morning," she announced. "Your wife represents a security concern. We are formally demanding she submit to a full background investigation or vacate the neighborhood. I stared at her. You're demanding what? She refused compliance, Karen continued sharply. Then a tactical team arrives, salutes her, and leaves. We are not ignoring that. This is a family community. Melissa stepped up behind me, arms folded, gaze razor sharp. Karen, she said calmly, you do not have the authority to request my personal records. And if you continue down this path, I will escalate, Karen scoffed. Escalate to who? Some imaginary agency? Melissa didn't blink. The office of the Inspector General would be a start, Mr. Lyle visibly paled. The man in the golf polo leaned closer to Karen and muttered. Maybe we're pushing this too. No, Karen snapped. She's hiding something. Alyssa moved past me. Holding a small remote, she pressed a button. The porch monitor mounted beside the door flickered to life, replaying footage from the previous morning. The SUVs, the armored van, the salute. Karen's triumphant expression collapsed into confusion. Alyssa fast-forwarded to the moment the tactical commander apologized. Karen's face drained of color. Lyle took a small step backward. The golf polo guy cleared his throat. I think we're done here. They left without another word. Melissa watched them go. She's not finished, she said quietly. Her pride won't allow it. She was right. Because that night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard the unmistakable metallic snap of someone tampering with our garage door. Not a random noise. Not settling wood. A deliberate attempt. I shot a pride in bed. Melissa was already awake, sliding into her slippers like she'd been waiting for this moment. You hear that? I whispered. Garage side entrance, she replied calmly. She picked up her phone and tapped twice. Silent alarm engaged. Cameras active. Let's identify our visitor. We moved into the kitchen where a small screen above the refrigerator flickered to life. A grainy night vision feed appeared. A dark figure crouched near the side of our garage, working a tool into the door latch. Zoom in, Melissa instructed. I adjusted the feed and nearly burst out laughing. Karen Fletcher, dressed entirely in black like a bargain bin action movie villain. A flashlight clamped between her teeth. A screwdriver in hand. She attempted to pry open our garage. Melissa exhaled slowly. She really believed this would go unnoticed. What's the plan? I asked. She didn't respond verbally. She simply tapped her phone again. 2 minutes later, a familiar black SUV rolled silently into the cul-de-sac.no sirens.no flashing lights. Just precision. 3 men stepped out. Leaner gear this time. No bulky SWAT armor. Their movements were sharper, more controlled. They bypassed our front door entirely and moved straight toward the garage with coordinated efficiency. Karen was so focused on the lock she didn't notice them until an infrared spotlight illuminated her silhouette. She froze instantly. A calm voice echoed through the quiet street. Karen Fletcher, step away from the property. Hands up. She yelped, dropping the screwdriver. Wait, I was investigating suspicious activity. You are trespassing, the lead agent said coolly. Attempted forced entry onto federally protected infrastructure. Karen blinked wildly. Federal? This is a residential home. Melissa opened the front door and called out casually, actually, Karen, the garage contains classified systems. You've just violated multiple federal statutes. I hope you packed overnight essentials. Karen's confidence was shattered. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. The lead agent held up a badge briefly. Department of Homeland Security. Your position carries no relevance here. They cuffed her firm but controlled. She didn't fight. As they escorted her toward the SUV, she trembled visibly. The vehicle disappeared into the night just as quietly as it had arrived. I turned to Melissa. She's going to jail? For tonight, Melissa said. Local charges won't hold long. But now, there's a federal incident file attached to her name. Exhaled slowly. So what happens now? She gave me a small, satisfied smile. Now, we renovate the garage, she said. The server room needs reinforcement. I stared at her. Server room? But she was already walking back inside. And that's when it finally hit me. Hadn't just married the woman I love, I had married someone whose life operated on levels. I was only beginning to glimpse a strategist, a protector, a legend hiding behind a bathrobe and a coffee mug. If you've ever had a neighborhood busybody try to flex imaginary authority on you, share your story. And if you think Melissa handled this with more composure than most trained agents would, you already know what to do, because sometimes the person someone underestimates the most is the one they should have feared all along.